Transmission lines are a very key component of the power system, and these are basic uh, mathematical representations that we have already gone through in several places. For the sake of completeness, I'm repeating all this. R, L, G, C are the four primary constants. For 50 hertz to 60 hertz systems, probably we don't care much about these transmission line equations. Instead, we go straight away into a lumped equivalent circuit instead of worrying about input impedance, etc., etc. More important is that you figure out RLGC values for a given transmission line. And based on that, you draw an equivalent circuit which has R multiplied by the length of the line in series, L multiplied by the length of the line in series, and in parallel we have got G multiplied by length of the line and the capacitance multiplied by the length of the line. We have done all this in previous lectures also. And formulas for calculating RLGC have already been shown to you in the past. Probably this problem was already solved, so I'm not going to resolve it here. But important thing is that treatment of transmission lines for power systems is not necessarily as complicated as it is for microwave and RF frequencies. Okay. And based on the geometry involved, whether we have whether we have 2-wire line or 3-wire line, or even more than 3-wire lines, the formulas for calculating RLGC are different and they are available in literature. Okay. Now, more important from the power system point of view is the design and implementation of transmission lines. And I'll give you some flavor today on these aspects. It's a PPT not prepared by me, but by somebody else. You can see the name. These are industry people who basically keep giving, lectures like this to other people. Planning a transmission line or planning transmission lines in a power system is a major issue based on which locality you are going to serve, what are the details involved, and so on. A lot of regulatory issues are also there. When you are trying to lay out the path of the transmission lines, there will be intervening structures that will have to be removed. If they are natural objects, then it's easy. If they are owned by people, then you have to go through a legal process to get those structures out of the way. You have to pay compensation to people and so on. A lot of logistics are involved in planning and laying transmission lines. Okay. It's not purely technical issue. It is legal plus technical plus human issue as well. A lot of links are there. Today you may not be interested in reading everything, but someday in future you may. That's why I'm showing you this PPT. Most of these things are written from American point of view, but I think they are equally applicable to all countries with some minor changes if necessary. Interconnected power systems are the largest physical machines in existence, that's for sure. Grid essentially is something that is fed from several sources. And it's a complicated issue how to keep the grid going so that it doesn't go out of sync or does not start misbehaving. But everybody feeds into the grid and then consumers are fed out of the grid based on requirements. Now, components in the grid, of course, I think you are already aware of all this. Generators, AC generators in particular, substations and transformers are part of the equipment as well. Transmission lines and distribution lines are the ones which are local transmission lines on the customer side. Again, this diagram is more or less similar to what I've shown you in the past. This is how a power system is represented. Schematically. Generation, transmission, and distribution. These are the three essential operations involved. And on top of it, protection against faults, which is something I'm going to take up soon. We have seen these pictures in the past, okay? So that's not. Typically, you see multiple transmission lines supported by the same towers because that is more economical. So the picture on the rightmost is more popular, but there are times when you may have only two wires supported by a series of transmission towers. It all depends. Substation typically looks like this. Even near Jamdoli, I think there is a small one. It may not look this complicated, but it is similar for sure. Lot of components. Switches, lightning arresters, these are all protection devices. They help in avoiding the undesirable effects of faults, whether created by nature or by some other sources. Bus is a word used in this context to denote a main line from which all the equipment is being fed in the substation. Okay, so by and large, info here is not new, but it is given in a concise form again. Typical definitions for EHV, HV, UHV, etc. Nowadays, even DC transmission is being considered because if you transmit DC over long distances using transmission lines, only the effect of R would matter. Effect of inductance and capacitance would go away. So losses will be less. So we generate AC, then rectify it and convert it into DC, send the DC over long transmission lines, and on the other side, we use inverters to get back to AC. That concept is being tried out in several countries, even in this country. The purpose is to reduce the losses, transmission losses. I mean. Okay, so these numbers are good to take a note of. Pictures. Now, in the US, there are a lot of regulatory authorities that make rules and regulations for power systems. In India also, I'm sure there are similar bodies. Electricity boards in each state do that job most of the time. And when there is a complicated issue, then central government would also take over. Especially when these are interstate affairs, the central government has to get into the game. Grids are interconnected regional systems. That is probably a good definition. An event in one location, that means in one power system, can affect other power systems because they are all on the same grid. Balancing is an act that we always strive for. No overloading, no non-uniform overloading. If overloading is there, it better be distributed. More demand in one part of the grid can be met from supply from other parts of the grid. The balancing act all the time. There are technical standards. Some of them are given here for planning transmission line. In fact, planning power systems. Okay. Basically, how much power you want to generate will be a big question when you are planning a new power system. And that, of course, is dictated by the societal needs in that part of the country. And then, of course, local factors like the kind of terrain you are dealing with will also come into picture. It's not easy to mount transmission lines over on hilly areas. So that fact has to be kept in mind. It is done, but it takes a lot more effort. Okay, so I will not waste too much of your time, but these are practical issues that industry has to be obsessed with in designing, building and operating power systems. Reliability is another thing. I'll be coming to it soon in a different set of notes. Okay, so right of way means you want to lay your transmission lines in a certain direction, and whatever objects are coming in your way have to be taken care of. If they are natural objects, then obviously it's easier. But if they are owned by somebody, then you have to purchase them, pay compensation, etc., etc. The transmission voltage should be high enough. Of course, the exact number has to be decided by so many other factors, but typically kilovolts, hundreds of kilovolts, or at least 33 kilovolt for sure, 11 kilovolt at the minimum, I know for sure. If there are lines already existing in that area and you want to lay another set of transmission lines, then you may want to put the new lines in parallel with the original lines so that you don't have to worry about path definition all over again. If railroads are already there or actual roads are already there, you just lay transmission lines along them. It's easier logistically. If there is none, then you have to chart your way properly to get from one point to another. Of course, if you have wetlands, historical structures, like obviously you don't want to run a transmission line which will require removal of Taj Mahal, right? The Taj Mahal cannot be removed, no matter what you try. So these things have to be kept in mind. In Jaipur city itself, there are a lot of historic structures. No way government will allow you to remove them if you want to lay transmission lines. So those facts have to be kept in mind when planning the path of the transmission. Okay, a lot more practical things. Okay, permits, etc., etc. Yeah, those of you who may find career in power systems will find all this very useful later in life. Let me close this now. Now, almost the last topic is faults, FAULTS, and protection against faults in the power system, of course. So let me jump into that. Stability is also another issue. We'll come to that if time permits. Let me begin with my own notes first. Power system faults and protection. Electric fault in an electric power system is defined as any abnormal electric current or voltage anywhere in the system. Any abnormality in current or voltage value anywhere in the system means there is a fault, electric fault. Now, protection devices, what are they? They are meant to detect and interrupt faults in the system. And some of the typical protection devices are fuses, circuit breakers, and even the relays and many other things. I have not mentioned everything here. Switches also. In a three-phase system, typical faults are these. Open circuit faults or short circuit faults. Two possibilities are there. A wire gets short circuited to another wire, or a wire gets cut for whatever reasons. Okay. Now, under short open circuited faults, it can be symmetrical or unsymmetrical. That means all wires are being affected in the same manner, or they are being affected in different manner. And under short circuit also, the same broad classification applies. Yeah, the headphone is giving me a problem. Anyway, now I'm fine. So remember that power system faults are either open circuits or short circuits, and then they can be symmetric or unsymmetric. Even in single phase systems, something similar would apply. Now, open circuit faults, it's obvious that they occur because of a breakage in the conductor. It can be caused by storms, nasty individuals for sure, catastrophes, earthquake, etc., calamities, which are worse than catastrophes. And schematic representation in case of a three-phase system is like this. You have red, yellow, and blue, that is ABC lines coming. R has been open circuited. One wire has been open circuited for whatever reasons. It's an unsymmetric fault because not all the wires are affected. Single phase because only one phase has been affected. This is two phase. R and Y both are open, but B is not open. It is continuing. And then three phase, where all the three wires have been open circuited for whatever reasons. When you have an open circuit, no current will flow. Okay. Open circuits are not desired, but in many cases, they are not that dangerous compared to short circuits. Short circuits create a large amount of current, which may damage the equipment seriously. Open circuit faults are also known as series faults or series type faults. Okay, as we have already seen, unsymmetrical or symmetrical. Three-phase fault is the symmetrical one. The other two are unsymmetrical. If one phase gets melted, like they're assuming that overheating has occurred and conductor has melted. If one phase gets melted, alternator load gets reduced on that phase. Okay, that alternator which is supplying that phase will have less load, which may affect the frequency of that particular generator and also the voltage transmitted in other phases. So it's a serious issue. Open circuit, although current produced is not there, but it may still affect frequency, etc. in the system. Short circuit faults. They are called shunt faults. They result due to an abnormal connection of very low impedance between 2 points of different potentials. We are not saying it is zero impedance. It can be a very small impedance connection between 2 points of different potentials. So that will be almost a short circuit. Whether intentional or accidental, that's also to be kept in mind. It may not be intentional all the time. It may be an accident. Most common and most severe types of faults are short circuit faults. These are common as well as serious. Extensive damage to equipment may occur because of them. Even if the short circuit has come in only for a second or two, it may still create enough damage in the system. We use insulators on transmission towers to create isolation between high voltage and the rest of the structure. If the current is too large, the insulator might burn also, although it is a dielectric material, but it may still burn. That may lead to fire. So short circuit faults obviously are a lot more dangerous. They can be balanced or unbalanced, depending on whether all the phases are affected or only one or two are affected. Now, some pictorial description taken from literature. Line to line faults, they are known as L to L or LL faults. Essentially are like this. You have an undesired impedance between two lines. The other possibility is line to ground faults, LG faults, where between one line and the ground, you may have undesired impedance, short circuit almost. So this is LL fault situation that we are showing. And some possibilities are being shown, not all possibilities. Between line B and line C, an impedance has been created somehow, which is not very large. So you have a short circuit case, almost a short circuit case. We don't have time to go through detailed analysis, but circuit theory essentially works in figuring out how much current would occur because of this impedance, etc. It's all KCL and KVL and ohms. Equivalent circuit is drawn first based on what is given to you, and then simple circuit theories will do the job. This is a very complicated fault. Two lines have been short circuited, apparently. And they are also short circuited to ground. It's LLG fault, line to ground fault. Yeah, double line to ground fault. Yeah, I'm not doing calculations, okay? A line to line fault occurs when a live conductor gets in contact with other live conductors. That is L to L fault. This may be happening because of heavy winds, and there may be other regions also. Heavy winds means swinging of wires. So accidentally two live wires may come in contact with each other, even for a short duration. Fifteen to 20% of faults are of this kind. These are statistics obtained on real life data. Double line to ground faults. In this case, two lines come into the contact with each other as well as with the ground. This is serious. They are severe faults. They constitute around 10% of the total faults that we see in real life. So they are not that common. Pictorial descriptions of various kind of faults. Single phase to earth, LG. Face to face, which is LL. And two phase to earth, LLG. And there may be other possibilities also. I'm sure you can imagine those possibilities. Okay. It's all taken from the net. You see the website. You can go there. Symmetrical faults are not that common because it is not generally possible that all the lines will be affected identically. You see the number 2 to 5% only. Unsymmetrical faults are a lot more common. Okay. So this is a rough description of the kind of faults we expect in power systems. How to mitigate their effect. There's a large amount of documents available. I don't think we will have time to go through each one of them, but let me see if I can show you something. Oh, this one is also, no, it's not necessary. Forget it. Yeah, these are large documents. I'll not go through them. Let me go to protection, I think that would be better. How do you protect against these faults? What do you do? Let me see, what should I do? Maybe I'll try this one. Yeah, this is a good PPT. You can see the author. It's American author again. Idaho Power is one of their power supply companies, obviously located in the state of Idaho. How to protect power systems is a full-fledged area of research. A lot of automation is occurring nowadays. A lot of computer science people are involved in designing these things. What is system protection? That means power system protection. This is the definition. System protection is the art and science of detecting problems and power system components. Sorry, detecting problems with power system components and isolating these components. Take them out of the system so that the rest of the system does not get affected. Problems, short circuits, open circuits, of course, they are not mentioning, but that's also a problem. Abnormal conditions, even if there are no short circuits or open circuits, you may still have high voltage or high current beyond the permissible range. So that is also a fault. And equipment may fail. Transformer may suddenly fail. Yeah, alternators may fail, and many other things can fail. So that is also a fault against which we have to protect the system. Now, protective systems or protective components include, the simplest one is the switch. It simply breaks the circuit by moving the switch from one position to another. You see switches in your home all the time. If you see smoke coming out of your fan, you will immediately switch off the fan. That is the simplest protection mechanism, which is purely manual. Okay. Then there are other things. I'm going to go through them one by one, but this is the definition of protection system. Protective relays. Relays essentially are low current devices that allow the high current or high voltage equipment to be controlled. If an abnormal situation has occurred, you switch off that path. But as soon as the abnormal condition is removed, you switch the paths back again. Switches don't do that, but relays do that. If the abnormality is removed, the path is restored to original operating conditions. And relays are not going to operate at high currents. They are low current devices, but they control high current equipment. Okay. Circuit breakers are another set of protective equipment. They are put directly in the high current path. They have lot of complicated construction inside. They also break the circuit in case of abnormality and restore the circuit when abnormality goes up. But it's not easy to control circuit breaker. Relays are much more controllable using smart techniques. This is the purpose of power system protection. Protect the public. Obviously, you don't want people to die. Stability is something I have not defined yet, but let me give you the basic idea. It is very similar to the definition of stability in case of circuits. If there is a transient input to the system somewhere, how fast can the system come back to its original behavior? That is roughly what we mean by stability. I'll be dealing with stability in the next lecture anyway, through a separate document. So one of the objectives of power system protection design is to improve the stability also. And the other one, of course, is to minimize the damage to the equipment and protect against overload and so on. What components do we protect? Obviously, the alternator, transformer, and in case of a nuclear system, reactor also. Transmission lines also you need to protect. Buses, that these are dedicated lines within the substation. And there are capacitors used to improve the performance. They may also blow up in case of abnormal conditions. So you need to protect them also. They're expensive devices, especially for large power applications. It is self-explanatory almost. I'm sure you can see the logical flow of power from generation to distribution. And at every step, you need to have protection devices. Protective relays monitor the current and voltage of the power system to detect problems with the power system. Okay. And current transformers and potential transformers are used to convert low values into high values for both currents and voltages. We have gone through CT and PT in the past also, but they are mentioned again here in the document. The idea is that, when you are dealing with large voltages and currents, measurement systems cannot measure them. So you need to bring these values down using PT or CT so that measurement is possible. Again, repetition, I think. Generator protection, I will not give you too much detail, but this is a huge area of research by itself. The largest dam in the world is in China. I don't know how many generators they have, but I'm sure they must have done a lot of work in terms of protecting those generators. Oh yeah, 26 generators right there. Yeah. Large number. And not all of them are operating simultaneously, I'm sure. 3 or 4 would always be down for maintenance. What can go wrong in a generator, in an alternator, I mean? Stator winding, short circuits can happen, overheating may be the reason for that. Suddenly, a grounding of the stator may occur unintentionally, of course. See how huge the alternators look for power systems. This is the stator they are showing. It's very large. I don't have the exact dimensions here, but it's large. You need a full building to keep it. Yeah, at least be aware of the kind of things that can go wrong. How do you protect the stator? A lot of methods. Let's not get too deep into any of this. Just be aware of these various techniques. Rotor problems may also be there. The flux that rotor is supposed to produce, suppose it gets lost because you are not able to feed it for whatever reasons. So that can be a problem. Field winding can be grounded by mistake for whatever reasons. So that possibility remains there. See the rotor and see the stator outside. These are salient poles that you see. So it must be a low speed rotor. Okay, now let me quickly rush through it because there's a lot of info here. You may not want to memorize anything, but keep this document with you. Generator may have another problem that may be related to frequency. The frequency of the signal generated may be too high or too low than what we want. Then something got to be done. Too much flux is being produced or too less flux is being produced by the rotor. That both possibilities remain. Out of step, one generator phase is not in sync with the other generator phase, and so on. A lot of things that can go wrong. A lot of circuits are around to take care of these problems. Transformer also may have faults or problems, abnormal behavior, for sure. So protection must be effective. These are expensive components, Obviously, circuit breakers will be there to break the path in case large current is flowing, larger than what you expect. Transformer, three-phase transformer here. You see a three-phase transformer in real life. Protection, a lot of things. Yeah, this is something that we have already gone through. What are the problems? Yeah, what can go wrong? That's the issue. Winding to winding faults. Okay. Short circuit between the windings or winding to ground. Again, similar to transmission lines. Bushing faults is another thing. That's mechanical side of the stories. Let's not get too much into it. See, here they're showing the result of a fault. Smoke, fire coming out. Fuse, of course, is the simplest thing. Yeah, I forgot to mention fuse. Fuse is a very common element for protection devices. It burns up when current goes beyond a certain value, but it does not restore the path. You have to replace the fuse. Okay, it is used in homes also all the time. So one simplest method will be to have fusage all over in the windings or at the inputs of the windings at least. Primary voltage, assuming it's higher side, is where we'll put the fuse. That's one possibility. Okay, that's not. I want to finish this document and then stop. Let's see how much more is there. Line protection is also important. What do we do? What can go wrong with the transmission line? What can go wrong? Yeah. Trees can affect the lines. Lightning can affect the lines. Animals, birds, weather, natural disasters, and faulty equipment. All these can affect the transmission lines. So you need to protect against all this as much as possible. You cannot foresee every possibility. There are times when faults would occur and you will have to deal with the consequences. For instance, it's not easy to deal with faults caused by lightning. You have to rebuild the line for sure. Earthquakes also fall in the same category. But other things you can try your best to protect against. If a tree falls on the transmission line, you should have foreseen that in planning. There should be no trees around as much as possible. Again, faults, as I have already mentioned, can be line to ground or line to line, and they can be symmetric or unsymmetric. They can be short circuits or open circuits. Okay, I think it's a long document. Maybe I won't be able to finish it